This morning, before I get carried away and start talking uncontrolled, we've got Spatial Fire Planning Service. I like to make sure that I didn't go over anything too fast, or if there is anything more you guys wanted to talk in the decision. I mean, I know one of the things we didn't talk about in that strategic course of action section, you can actually define how much of your fire is full suppression, how much is monitor, how much is point zone protection. You can also tell it to override 209. So there's some things you can do. I would recommend overriding 209 as long as your process with your center is dispatch is entering the 209s, you would want to override that. Why that would be useful though is maybe in times where they're busy, maybe somebody clicks the wrong box in dispatch, or they submit it wrong. As a fire, you could go in and fix it pretty with this. It would be a quick, easy way to fix it. That's kind of the benefit that I see.
And that's whatever 209 is current in the system, or?
Yes. Yeah, the current approved 209 is the authoritative. There's a field in there for whether it's full suppression, whether it's point zone protection, or the suppression strategy of the fire, right? So that's the authoritative data source, unless you override that in WFDS. If you override that in WFDS, then WFDS becomes the authoritative data source for how you're reporting your suppression strategy.
Can go back and forth, or once you go into WFDS?
I don't know how the feed works back. I mean, I don't know if 209 would read it from WFDS. I don't know the ins and outs. I could look at they got wiring diagrams, what they call them basically, and look and get back with you in the future. I don't know off the top of my head.
You change the ownership on the 209 through WFDS, like when you override it? Because we noticed the ownership for quartz fires in Humboldt County was like pretty.
That was a mistake on the 209.
That was a mistake on 209, but is that something you change in WFDS when you override?
You don't want to change that stuff through WFDS. All that stuff originates in CAD, and you want to keep it in CAD for as long as you can in CAD. So that's why every recommendation will always be called dispatch, have them do it in CAD. There's no questions on what we covered this morning. Again, the afternoon section of the agenda, just got a couple of things we're going to talk about. One is reviewing Spatial Fire Planning Service data. So we'll do that. And to get into Spatial Fire Planning Service, you log in. It's just an AGOL product. I was logged in earlier. You do have to authenticate, and it's really just a basic filter here. So I'm going to show you guys kind of what we have for different data. And the other reason why I'm bringing this up now is because there's updates that we need to do to the subunit non-overlapping shapes that we're still kind of in a transition phase with overall suppression terminology direction and the naming convention of how we have those currently in Spatial Fire Planning Service. So I'm not saying we have to do one thing or another. It's basically FMO, FMO discretion, however you guys want your data to read right now. But within Spatial Fire Planning Service, there's 4 basic types of shapes that we have. The first is the unit boundary shape. The unit boundary shape encompasses the entire district of the jurisdictional unit that we're looking at. So in this case, we're looking at Winnemucca District. If we want to go back and look at Battle Mountain District, we certainly can. The reason why we need to look at the unit boundary shape, and this goes back to how the data was brought in. All of the data that's in Spatial Fire Planning Service was imported from Classic WFDS. So a lot of the early spatial fire planning that we did in Classic WFDS, we weren't really refined back then. So the unit boundary was kind of a catch-all. If we didn't have a more specific shape of how we wanted to spatially represent whatever that thing was, we just assigned it to the unit boundary, and then every time somebody clicked our unit boundary, it brought that direction into the WFDS decisions. So in a lot of cases, you have language specific to your district in the unit boundaries that may fit perfectly fine, and it's perfectly great place for it. But in a lot of cases, from what I'm seeing, we've got a better shape. Somewhere in the last 10 years, you guys have put a better shape into your spatial fire planning data that better represents whatever that text is supposed to be tied to. So like in this case, I think Winnemucca's, I think all you guys' stuff is fine that you have in here, but I just want to make sure that you're aware of all the language that is incorporated with the unit boundary too. So you have,
So that unit boundary is the actual district boundary?
yes,
Dispatch boundary, right?
district boundary, jurisdictional unit. You do have language in here regarding managing fire to obtain multiple objectives. So again, you know, that's coming from your land use plan, that's fine. As long as that reference in there is still valid, which that's your 2015 land use plan, that's good. You've got WUI language, so obviously WUI language, it can be tied to everything, but the point is that all of these different fields that are in here, and this is kind of a hard way to read it too. You can read it in with this if you want to read the actual text that's associated with that unit boundary. But you can see here that I can't like drag this menu up and I can't make it any bigger. I just have to scroll through it. So some of the other things, you know, you have sage grouse, hawk, cutthroat, desert days. These are the examples of, you probably have a shape somewhere that better represents this in your fire planning data, right, Kyle? It'd be better just cut that text out of your unit boundary and put it into that shape. So it's more specific to if somebody clips that spatial area. That makes sense?
So you're saying the shape, instead of just showing the full district,
Yeah.
that language is gonna be the.
Yeah, if it can't be, in a lot of cases, this language needs to stay in here because it does apply to the entire unit boundary and you want it to apply to everything that clips that unit boundary. But if there's examples like any of these habitats, I guarantee that in your spatial fire planning data, you have a better sage grouse habitat layer, you have a better LCT habitat layer, any of these habitat types, right? That you could better associate that language.
Okay.
And make your spatial fire planning data more operationally relevant, right?
I'm trying.
Than just saying this applies to the entire district. Now you can say this applies to this polygon within the district.
I'm trying.
Okay? That's all, I mean, that's all we're looking at this level for the unit boundary stuff. So that's the unit boundary shape. You guys have a lot of language associated in there, so that's good. A lot of it's probably, like I said, necessary. But I would just check and make sure that there isn't a better shape that you could associate that with. So the next one down is the subunit non-overlapping shape. This is where we've, using spatial fire planning and the naming convention of the subunit non-overlapping, we basically delineated Winnemucca district into one of three response types. It's either full suppression, non-greater sage grouse, full suppression due to greater sage grouse, or other than full suppression, whatever that other option is. It could be one of the many other options. So that's how we have all the data in there right now. What needs to be updated, and I know that you talked to Steve yesterday, so whatever you and Steve talked about, I'm not going to interrupt your process. But between the full suppression, greater sage grouse, needs to be the new 2025 layers, right? At the multi-unit level, we haven't looked at the multi-unit shape, but I've loaded in all of the text direction, all of the spatial direction for the state under the multi-unit shape at the state office. So whenever you guys draw a boundary that clips that, which is anything in Winnemucca district, it's going to pull all that language in. So right now, the multi-unit shape and the subunit non-overlapping shape conflict because you got 2025 direction in multi-unit and you got 2021 maps, 2015 ARPA direction coming out of the subunit non-overlapping. So we need to get that updated sooner rather than later, whatever we can do. The other part of that process is now that we've made the switch to the new habitat types, right? We've decreased our greater sage grouse habitat significantly. I don't know exactly what the acreage decrease is for Winnemucca, but across the state, it was 15 million acres decreased, you know? Yes, yeah, that's why we went to the new habitat, or the new plan is, it basically incorporates the best available science, newest available science, and all the old fires. I mean, all of the fires we've had over the last 15 years are now part of that sage grouse habitat classification process. So it was cheatgrass and no longer, it's a OHMA. Anyway, part of the shape file that was provided back in February, obviously we know everything that is full suppression due to greater sage grouse. At the local level, you guys have the information of everything that's non-greater sage grouse. So if it falls back to your Winnemucca RMP, your Black Rock RMP, whatever other land use planning documents fall outside of your greater sage grouse habitat. At the state level, we don't have that data. We need you guys to clip that data, get it into Spatial Fire Planning Service, and then we'll have it digitally. We can do whatever, but we need to get that data from you guys. And then in that same effort, when you're determining what is full suppression based off of your other land use plans, whatever you have that is other than full suppression. And that's what we called it based off of the direction we had up until a month ago, whatever. So these naming conventions may change, but for now, I would stick with that same concept anyway, unless you guys see an issue. So that's kind of the workflow that needs to be done is these three shapes need to be edited. We can provide, and we have provided the greater sage grouse shapes, but anything outside of that greater sage grouse is going to fall back to your local data.
What kind of workflow do you think that is?
I don't know.
It's getting to have the data. A lot of people don't have the data.
So we have the maps, might have to be digitized in for, so the BlackRock, 90% of the BlackRock RMP was less than full suppression, but that only the prescription was less than 10 miles an hour winds.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much
Exclude.
it's the remainder of that area. But then most of it's already covered by sage grouse. Just look at the map really good. But we do have the maps for that. We have like 100,000 acres, I think, the top of Pine Forest, where the trees are, where it's on sage grouse. Fox range burned already. I can't.
Right.
There's only 100,000 acres that are not full suppression within the farm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
A little bit of the still waters.
Yeah, it's a tiny bit of still waters, which aren't sage grouse. One of the few areas where I think that.
And honestly, I think it's that little piece that's not even in the sage grouse.
Yeah, it's not. You want to look at the other one, full suppression, which I like. Yeah. That's what you're showing right now.
Yeah, and that's about.
And remember, this language is still being pulled into what this is. You can edit. If you wanted to do some kind of edit to put an asterisk, based off of secretarial direction, dated whatever, even though these are even though these are other than full suppression, they will be managed as full suppression. If you wanted to cover your.
It just means it's an option. We can always override the.
However you get
full suppression.
We have had some like middle of like an early spring fire where there's just a cluster of trees at the top of the still waters that's basically no access anyways. And so we're like, well, we just monitor it.
Right.
And it's in the rains or whatnot, but that's the only time I think that I've been here.
Under the new direction, we have to put people on it.
Unless it's not safe.
And this was here. That's what I'm saying. In 30 years, that's,
Management response.
in 30 years, that's the only time we've ever actually knocked on that.
Just remember, we adopt these new.
Our wording needs to be such to say that we're doing something, but what we actually do is still going to be an appropriate management response. We just talk about it differently.
Yeah.
Use different adjectives.
Right.
And the rest of those areas, when we did the RMP, they just made us pick some areas. You guys could have something. I don't know why.
Right.
But so I just picked up two random areas. It was arbitrary.
Sorry, deeper joke.
So to answer your question on it, it's probably take.
Sorry, what?
I said, answer your question, it probably wouldn't take. Just getting those layers. I just haven't done it because I haven't wanted to.
Well, you guys did your last one, was what, 2021, right?
Yeah.
That, you should have had that data for that, so whoever did that that data was done for that FMP update, and it should be somewhere.
Available, yeah.
Should know.
Oh, Darcy. Yeah, me and Darcy worked on it. Sorry.
On it, I just haven't.
Oh, it's true. I need one more fire assignment to get through it. Yeah. So are you guys good on kind of what the work that needs to be done here? I mean, I can go through and talk more, but really these are the important layers in spatial fire planning, because in all of our map products, this is the data that we read for all of those maps that show all of the different response zones across the state. So the effort to try to get a standardized naming convention has been somewhat successful, but there's still enough latitude where every district can have their own autonomy in the naming convention to cover whatever needs you have.
So looking on the battle mountain ones now, there's no language attached to it at all.
On any of the subunit non-overlapping?
Yeah.
I think you should have, let's take a look real quick.
I think mine keeps going in and out.
I think it's loading process.
Yeah.
These windows are weird.
You
You
can
click-
like clicked on.
There used to be stuff, when I look at it, there would be stuff.
Yeah, so here, we can pull them. Well, let me cover Winnemucca, and then we'll just move into Battle Mountain. We'll just go through the same process with Battle Mountain. That work?
Yep.
Okay, so we're sticking with Winnemucca. The last thing we want to look at is the subunit overlapping shapes. And so if you think of the subunit non-overlappings, obviously they don't overlap, right? So every single acre of your district is covered by one of those three polygons that we just talked about. These polygons can overlap. So these can be polygons such as wildlife habitat, which you guys, I think this is what this one is, right? Or wilderness. That's wilderness. Then you have Fiat 1, forest range. And you guys probably know what all of like BRHR, what's that? That's Black Rock, High Rock. Conditional suppression. So you have conditional suppression areas identified here. I'm not seeing a polygon.
No, take a second.
Oh, they do take a second.
It's the same as the curve.
Okay. So as long as that doesn't conflict, that's fine, but I would just make sure those match up, because those, whatever language you have in here should be the same thing that you have in the other than full suppression, right? So if you want to keep that, you can, but then you got bighorn, all of these other, and basically what these habitats are any type of habitat that spans multiple response zones. That's what you would use to identify it here. These are the primary shapes that go into Spatial Fire Planning Service. Again, the text direction that goes with these shapes is edited through this dashboard. Kyle, Donovan, Derek, I think Bobby, Chad, you guys are all data editors. I know it's your fire planners that are doing the work, but FMOs, fuels program managers, and fire planners should all have a data editor role, where if you had to, you could go into Spatial Fire Planning Service and do that. You should be able to log into your AGOL account and make sure you're in that group. If not, I can add you. Just let me know if you're not. Andy, I think I may need to look at adding you. I don't know if you're in there or not, if you want it. You're looking at me kind of sideways, like you don't want it, so.
Just can't see this. The new agency is the district's now providing us different shapes or layers now that we need to put in
That's,
if stuff changes.
we, the Wildland Fire Service, are gonna have to work with them, the bureaus, to annually, at least annually, come up with a process where we meet with them, get any needed updates, display, show what we have, and make sure we've got everything current, right? So, yeah, in that authorities table, it's still the bureau's responsibility to get us their updated shapes, but it's our responsibility as the fire service to get it into spatial fire planning. Makes sense. Okay. So those are all, those can all span multiple, and then the other unit shapes. I don't know how many other units, you guys have quite a bit of shapes, polygons.
And
primarily.
lines.
Okay, so let's look at polygons to start with.
I think this is where I was changing language. I was talking, said don't worry about it. So I think has the LCT.
This is a polygon for wildland fire, rangeland fire protection associations, right? So that's, you have polygons for all of them, or is that,
That's the only one
okay?
right now.
You know, that's for anything. You guys can put anything you want in there. So every district has different information in there. We've used it differently for other districts, you know, but yeah, whether it's, you can see how it's classified, point lines and polygons. You know, we can go through and take a look at the lines and see what you guys have in here for lines too, because that's a good one sometimes. But all this information, is ingested through, so yeah, you guys have all your LCT, right? So this would be, you know, whether you kept it as another unit shape, or maybe this becomes a subunit overlapping shape. You know, you buffer these lines out and call them a polygon, then load it in as a subunit overlapping shape, and then assign your LCT language to that. And it gets pulled into every WFDSS decision as a subunit overlapping shape direction. Little things to consider. I mean, there's no right or wrong way. There's no specific direction to how this is done, but right now this is just an other unit shape. So this wouldn't necessarily get pulled into your decision unless somebody who knew it as another unit shape went into the filter, found it, and then pulled it into the decision. But if you load it in as a subunit overlapping shape, it's one of those things that automatically gets pulled in every spatial inventory, if that makes sense. So little things.
I would just click on one polygon and pulled up Bighorn sheet. We already have that in the other other unit shapes. But it looks like it's a Wang from Southern District. Put it in there. And it's tied to our district.
When we look at that, then I guess. So they have a big orange sheep habitat layer that covers. Does that go all the way down to Southern Nevada?
I think so.
You pulled into your decision unless you told it you wanted to pull that language in.
I see.
Yeah. Other unit shapes can overlap, go outside your boundary.
Got it. Okay.
Because it's just another unit shape. There's no jurisdictional authority. It's just some type of shape that is relevant to the unit that put it in. So let's look at Battle Mountains. You guys are good? Are you good with Winnemucca data? Is there anything else you guys want to look at? I've been keeping a table that all the fire planners have access to, or we talk to monthly anyway, and things that could be edited in Spatial Fire Planning Service. So I'm more than willing to help out if there's anything I can do. So we'll go into Battle Mountain, go back to view data if you're following along with me.
And I was in training is why I wasn't seeing.
Oh, okay, that's what I was wondering too. Yeah, there is a training side of Spatial Fire Planning Service. They set that up originally and it was kind of useful, but there's no, it doesn't, you'd think that the training side of Spatial Fire Planning Service gets pulled into WFDSS training. It doesn't work that way. It's just a training side. So, okay, you're good. But yeah, we'll look at your data. I mean, if there's any other questions, so we'll go to Battle Mountain District. We'll look at that unit boundary again. See how much direction, how much language you guys have in your unit boundary. So again, this is unit boundary, everything that gets pulled in. Yeah, that's just common language. Potential effects on the local grazing permittee will be considered on all fires where appropriate management responses. What does that mean to you, Chad? I mean, does it require you to do anything that you haven't normally done? Right? I mean, this is just saying that at the end of the fire, your resource advisor or your range specialist is going to contact the permittee and.
Or during the fire.
Okay, right, but doesn't mean that you have to do anything special, right? Okay, so that's all I was curious about, or curiosity than anything else. Sensitive species. So, again, you have this sensitive species is being applied to your entire district boundary, which is fine, but to make it more operationally relevant, if you knew what those specific polygons were and then tied that language to those polygons, makes it a little more relevant, right? So
So let me clarify, so we would add that as an other shape file then, and then, or is that what you're saying, or?
no, I would include this as a subunit overlapping. You would develop, you would have the polygon, right, of all your T&E species for the district. You would load that in as a subunit overlapping polygon and then put the language in there. And then every time it got clipped, it would pull that language into your WFDSS decisions.
And then would we then take it out of the?
Yeah, you could take it out of there because, I mean, sure, it provides some direction there, but is it operationally relevant if you don't know where those lines are, where those polygons are?
It would, sounds like it's gonna be the little hot and cut kill trout in meeting where it's talking about.
Well, we have.
Of course.
Yeah.
We have figure out it's all your stuff in there.
Just a GIS exercise, merging all that information into one, right? CT language. Pardon. Sometimes, on retardant avoid zones, we do have those specific areas mapped out now, even on all the Forest Service areas are specifically mapped out. So again, I mean, if you can fall back to, if you know that the known national layers cover your needs, whether or not that's, still needed in there, that could be, something to be decided. So yeah, that's the unit boundary. Moving to the subunit non-overlapping shapes. Again, these are I think Battle Mountains is just a 3-2. Yep. So you guys are following the standard naming convention, full suppression due to greater sage grouse. Again, this is the same updates are needed for these layers in order to make sure we're referencing the 2025 ARPA. So you have full suppression greater sage grouse. This is full suppression non-greater sage grouse once the shape updates. Takes a little while to update. The language is down here. Again, most of this language is coming out of your Tonopah RMP, it looks like. Probably, are there any other planning documents that you guys fall under? Other than that Tonopah RMP?
Eureka.
This is showing Eureka one. Okay, so that would get pulled in if that was part of that too. And then the other than full suppression areas that you have specific language, looks like just that Warm Springs area, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, those are WSAs that allow for, or allowed for that management. My question is, so we have direction right now, right, that it's gonna be full suppression no matter what. But like, this is in our RMP, right? So do we need to change that in here? Really? I mean, if.
I know, yeah, I don't know. That's a valid question. And I wish I could answer that.
Also in there too, you have to have a explaining for it. Explain. Basically.
Well, it says if an approved natural prescribed fire plan is written.
Yeah.
So you actually have to have an approved plan in place. So, yeah, but back, I mean, yeah, I don't know. In unit FMOs, that's your decision to make, right? I mean, what is the secretarial memo override what your land use plan says, or does your land use plan take precedent over what a secretarial memo
I
says?
think the land use plan just says what you can do, it doesn't say what you.
That's on the planning document.
Yeah.
But
I think the secretary signed out land use plan, so.
those are good questions. I don't have the answer. Yeah, I mean, those would be questions that you'd have to pass up. I mean, eventually we're gonna I think we're gonna reach that point, right? And that was my first question when I saw that is a memo from the secretary shouldn't override the land use planning direction that's been through the NEPA process. And we all know that, but we're in weird times and weird things are
It's like an
happening.
executive order.
But it's not, right? Because it's not even a secretarial order. It's a pre-season leader's intent memo But at least the version I got looked like he typed it up on his word processor and nobody even gave him the letterhead to put it on, right? Am I wrong? You guys remember what the memo looked like? I mean, so I don't know. I can't answer that question.
I guess just to kind of circle.
That's the reason, my recommendation, you can still put the bullet in, right? You don't have to change the language. You can put a little asterisk statement at the bottom of this paragraph and state that as of this date, this memo was issued stating that we will go full suppression, and that will get pulled into every WFDSS decision if you wanted to do that.
It wouldn't be that hard to change it, but.
Oh, no, that's Kyle going, any of us can go in and add that language right now if we wanted to. We could type it in there and it'd be in there for the rest of fire season if you wanted it to be.
These are like a toolbox, though, right? It's not like hard coded values that you're forced to comply with.
These 3 layers should be tied back to a specific NEPA action that gives you the authority to either, like in this case, right, the Greater Sage Grouse obviously gives us specific direction to put fire out, to minimize fire side, and minimize the impacts to habitat.
I guess the thought is, I don't think our RMPs, because as old as they are, do adaptive management, but in theory, you can have adaptive management, where conditions are X, Y, or Z, you might have a suite of choices that you move forward with. Is this subsystem set up to handle something like that? Or if it's here, then that's something that gets applied.
The intent is to be, if you have a NEPA action, if you have a NEPA that's actually analyzed or naturally ignited fire, not prescribed fire, right? But if you've actually analyzed the alternative of managing naturally ignited fire, that would allow you to manage it as other than full suppression and whatever that NEPA direction gives you, right?
Yeah.
That's how I would view it. I am not a decision maker. I am not I'm not even a NEPA coordinator.
Yeah, I just keyed in on the word saying that would allow that flexibility, right? So
Correct.
when we talk about this secretarial memo, maybe conflicting with land use plan, that's obviously the discussion that happens between the service and the Bureau.
I think it's going to have to happen eventually.
But at the same time, even if you pull, because this language will be pulled into your WFDSS decision, but you can still edit it there, correct?
You could edit it in the
Before you submit your WFDSS decision.
Yeah. But as a fire planner, I try to make it a point, like this language that is getting pulled in as a subunit non-overlapping should basically be copied and pasted out of your land use plan. There shouldn't be, you shouldn't have any type of wordsmithing. I mean, it should be pretty much verbatim of what is directed in your land use plan. So those are all good points and good questions. And I'm not pointing this out I'm pointing this out as things we need to be considering here in the next 6, 8, 12 months, right? As we continue to go through this transition and this process of, especially if we're gonna, and again, we go back to that suppression terminology, right? If we do get that, if you guys have read that, the two options that we're gonna have require us to put people on the ground on every fire. So if you're not gonna do that within your WFDSS decision, there would probably be some language that you'd want to include for why you didn't do that, whether it's safety risk, whatever that is. But yeah.
It's not even be on the ground, it just might be indirect.
We'll go back. Look at subunit overlapping shapes. And again, these can overlap. So for Battle Mountain, you got 2, you got HMAs and WSAs. So management areas and wilderness study areas. And you go into other unit shapes. I always like to look at polygons first. I always loaded most of my language in as polygons, so. You get some Armagosa something. Armagosa toad habitat. Armagosa toad habitat. Desert tortoise habitat. bighorn habitat, and what about this one, like a pronghorn habitat that covers the entire district? So yeah, I mean, in like pronghorn habitat, we used to do that too. Are you gonna manage pronghorn habitat any different than you would manage non-pronghorn habitat? No, so I mean, does it need to be, I mean, is it operationally relevant? If it is, then yeah, keep it in there, but things like that, those are probably carryovers from previous, district managers or previous FMOs or whatever. If they're not operationally relevant to us in 2026, you can take them out now. That's your discretion. Anything else you guys want to look at for Battle Mountain?
I had a question on, there's the tab misfit data.
Mhm.
What, did you go over that at all?
No, that's a great point. Yeah. So misfit data. Again, all of this was information that was brought over from Old WFDS, right? So we had years and years of data built up in Old WFDS. In some cases, we had shapes that had no text. In some cases, we had text that were not associated with shapes. In any of those circumstances, they're classified as misfit data, and they were thrown into this. So in most cases, if we were to look at, like, for example, shapes, this one is what they set the filters up a little differently. So you gotta pay a little more attention to this one.
Oh,
So for Battle Mountain, this is probably a good example, right? Fiat 1, 2, and 3. These are misfit data. They're misfit data because they have no language to go with them. This is the Fiat assessment that went with the 2015 ARPA. We're still following this Fiat assessment, right? So if you guys wanted this, all you would have to do is associate language to each of these Fiat zones and explain what they are. But yeah, the Fiat zones are still relevant data, and they're in misfit data just because they don't have language associated. So, and yeah, there's other examples too, but yeah, anything, and we've been looking at these over the last year or so since the transition. So yeah, if there's opportunities to get any of this data out of misfit data, it's going to live here for the next couple of years, they say, but who knows? At some point, somebody may decide that they need to clean that out and delete everything. So if you think there may be data in there that's still relevant to you that just needs one or the other, it's just a matter of either the data editor or the GIS specialist making the edits on the side that they need to make the edits on. Good question, though. Thank you for asking about that. I would have skipped over that misfit data tab entirely. All right, so let's go back into view data, and just because we got Toby here, let's look at what the Forest Service has. And I don't bring that up.
I've been in here, cleaning up our stuff, because a lot of it was really, wordy, so I had to do like an HTML cleaner to it, and then do a lot of the labeling.
Unit non-overlapping.
Any of those is good to see.
Okay, so yeah, let's look at unit boundary first and see kind of unit direction we have in there. Oh, it's gonna look a little different. I'm on the edit language tab right now, and I'm not gonna edit anything. Otherwise, I probably would have overridden whatever edits you've been working on. So if that pops up like that, you got no language associated with the unit boundary, so that's good. That means that all your language is tied into either your subunit non-overlappings or your overlappings.
But the labels did take, that was the last thing I'd worked.
Oh, yeah, no, this is big here. Because before there was no geographic name, right?
Yeah,
Is that what you put in?
it was like H12,
Yeah,
so,
so what would we look at here? Santa Rosa Peak Wilderness?
yeah.
Okay. language. Be it for you guys, right? Then do you have anything in the overlapping?
I think there is. I think in a lot of that, you'll see the sage grouse stuff and then the wilderness. Yeah, so these labels I use.
That was a big improvement though, just adding, because before it was, I would have to scroll through, and right, you just have to go through each shape and until you found the one that you were looking for. So yeah, that's a big improvement there.
It took me a little while because I was having to go to the management plan, forest management plan, and just make sure I was getting the labels right. Like I knew the areas, but just making sure it was lining up.
What's an RNA? Fire. Like, got goals, objectives. So yeah, all of this language will get imported into WFDSS decisions, based off of how it reads in there, so.
Would it help, for me to change some of those labels, like that H20MR? Thinking out loud, but
So what is this referencing? Like the geographic name included in there. Because that tells me, I mean, not knowing, at least I can filter down that list and I know that if I'm in Winnemucca, I need to look at Santa Rosa, right? But just having H20MR, unless you have the Greg Emerson cheat sheet, right? You wouldn't know what that H20MR reference was tied to.
okay. Well, I'll put that on my list and then I'll go and work on that.
Yeah. But no, that's a big improvement over what we had in there before. Not saying that, I mean, what Emerson did at the time made sense for what we were doing at the time, right? But yeah, now that we're in spatial, and this is, again, with our naming conventions, that's what we were trying to do with the naming convention, right? Was take the guesswork out of it. So somebody could look at a map and say, okay, that's full suppression, that's full suppression, that area is other than full suppression, you know? So you could actually look at an area and prioritize based off of, we know that's going to be the highest priority because that's full suppression greater sage grouse habitat. That's the next highest priority because that's full suppression non-greater sage grouse. And then the third priority is your lowest priority is always that other than full suppression. So we didn't use it necessarily as a way to manage. We use it as a way to prioritize fires too. Cool. All right. Any questions on spatial fire planning service or any of that data that we looked at? Cool. Yeah, the last thing that I was hoping to talk about, and I know, Kyle, you guys have a local product too, so, is the in briefing story map. And the only reason I'm bringing this back up, I mean, I created this a few years back when I was a plans chief for Red Basin Team 5. Because I got tired of being a plans chief and sitting through online briefings and nobody having a tool to let us look at. So created this story map to use basically as a visual reference. So if you're doing a virtual in briefing, which I highly recommend you do, and maybe from other people, they have different perspectives, but I'll tell you from a plans chief perspective, and from an agency administrator perspective, doing a virtual in briefing for a team allows you the most flexibility and allows them the most flexibility in getting to your briefing and also getting to your district and getting to your fires. So if I can tell a team to be in cell phone service at 12 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, they can manage their travel appropriately and make sure that they're there and not have to be held up waiting for a briefing. At the same time, from the local unit, it allows you to do a briefing on your schedule whenever you want to deliver it. And it gives the information to the team that they need. It's not going to give everybody all the information they need. The ops folks still may need to do some local referencing. The incident commanders, the ops folks, those guys may need to be face-to-face interfacing a little bit more. But the rest of the team can get the information that they need 90% out of that virtual briefing, right? And it allows them flexibility to manage their travel schedule, just make sure that they have cell phone service. But it ties back to that ISAP process, because the sooner you can do this and start building that, that information sharing with the team, that goes into ISAP and the identification of critical values at risk that we've already done through the WFDSS decision, and then getting them the information they need to be operational as soon as possible by delivering an online virtual in-brief. So I know there's different perspectives, Donovan, from the ops side. I don't know, maybe a little more face-to-face time, interfacing with the local unit. You guys are, your divisions are normally already on the fire.
Yeah.
At that point, so.
There's pretty little that we're actually gleaning from the in-brief. It's more, I want to talk to either the current IC or I want to talk to the outgoing ops chief and put our heads together.
So I'll just to get to that point quicker.
Yeah.
Some, your perspective, I mean, I'm sure you've gotten them both ways, right?
I agree 100%. This is a way better option just to have it out there for both sides of the fence. And with organizations type threes, speed is of the essence, especially within the state, because we can do while folks are driving and pull over, and ops folks are hitting the ground running hours before we want to even do this virtual or in person.
Right.
Massive plus for us.
Yep. So it follows, and again, I know you guys, at least Winnemucca has a different story map. This is a story map that's publicly accessible, right? So you give out this link, you tell them to click on the link when you start the briefing, and they can be following along. Between the WFDSS decision and the story map, you have all of the visual technology or visuals you need to deliver a quality briefing, right? All of the maps that you would need to reference are available through the story map. Whoever's facilitating your briefing would have to come in and load those web pages up, right? So you can click on them and be ready to go. But all of that information is available through the links and in this story map in the outline. And this outline mirrors Appendix D of the Red Book that has all of the briefing information in there. And then at the bottom, again, so you would just work through, have your resource advisor come up, resource advisor would talk, have your center manager come up, they would talk about how to order stuff, have your aviation guy come up, talk about how to order aircraft. And then at the bottom, all of the links, but if you have specific district information that you want to provide, I can provide you an electronic hosting. I can put it in FireNet. So that allows full public access. You don't have to be DOI, you don't have to be in FireNet, you don't have to be on SharePoint or anything else. If you have other tools, like I know we talked about, this is your guys' story map. Elko District has a G Drive set up. I think that link goes to their G Drive. Southern Nevada District has a briefing website that goes to them. Ely District, we used to have stuff posted on FTP. Now that FTP's changed, we got to figure out another option for them. But if you have electronic briefing information that you want to include in this, I can post it and host it.
So I guess my question on that was, like, up top there, they go to links, but how do you get, like, I don't know, scroll up to the top a little bit, I can,
All the way.
yeah. Like, how do this is just not generic, but
Yeah.
how do you get specific information in here for those people? Like, how do you update a link or?
That information would be the electronic. I mean, if you're providing specific electronic files to them, That would be through that link at the
So
bottom.
that would just, yeah.
This would just be like, I would load up the WFDSS decision, right? So I'd be switching back and forth between the WFDSS tab and this tab, and I'm facilitating your briefing.
Okay.
This is just, you give them the link, and then on the other side, they can sit there and fidget away, they can go through, they can look at the weather forecast. They don't necessarily have to sit there and listen to what's being said. They can click on the links and find their own information or get their own weather forecast or go into Steve's dashboard.
And start looking at that.
Yeah,
because they
whatever,
appreciate what you're talking about.
Mhm. Yep.
You know, for the operations
Yep.
side, they can go to their section
Yep.
and start looking at it.
Yep. So that's how it's set up to be. The bottom link is the important. If you guys have electronic information
Yeah.
posted one way or the other, this is how we can share it with them. And again, I mean, I know people put stuff on SharePoint. I know even within Nevada BLM, I mean, we've had things on SharePoint. If we can get it on FireNet, everybody has access to it. And all it takes is me getting your files and I can post them on FireNet and make them publicly available, if you're good with them being publicly available and they're out there. So if you do have stuff you want me to post, you can send it to me. It's just as simple as me posting in the FireNet. Then I create a link down here under your district and it links straight to us.
I got it also. I'll get it to you.
Okay, cool.
I just wasn't sure how, like, that process worked with
Right.
that, as far as adding.
Right.
stuff.
No, this is just, this is a story map, you know.
Right now, all I got is PowerPoint basically.
Yeah, and this just replaces the power, I mean, that's all this is basically PowerPoint, but would you build a PowerPoint for individual incidents?
It's set up based off of this,
Okay,
and I
gotcha.
just made
That's a
slides,
good idea. I like that.
so
Yeah.
it was easier for my brain to
Sure.
wrap around.
Yep.
But I'll get the information to get it all on there.
Okay. And again, the reason like, you know, this gets everybody the information they need and, you know, as an incoming plans chief, as soon as I got the order to go to your fire, I'm already digging into your WFDSS decision, so I've already got that information. Nope, you know, all that information is already being shared in one form or another, so you don't have to provide all that information electronically, just being able to talk to it and know that the information is posted and available. Most teams have access to it, but those ADs, you know, for the AD finance chief that's coming out of Eastern Montana, you know, for her to be able to click on the link and download exactly what she needs, you know, while she's on the drive down, it really helped her out. And that's all we're trying to do is, you know, we're trying to set this up, and I've seen examples of this, and I know we've all seen examples of this. We are really good at supporting our Great Basin teams and our Great Basin processes, but when we get into PO5 and we have to rely on other people coming in to help us, that's where maybe we need to do a little bit better job coordinating stuff and helping these guys stand up to be successful, in my mind. And little things like this, I think, help prepare a team. And this is from my experience as the finance chief. You know, I've facilitated virtual briefings. I did one for Ely District a couple years ago. And by all means, I think they're the best, most efficient way to get that information across and get the information needed. And it starts that ISAT process, because the sooner you get that information across, the sooner you start talking about your WFDSS decision, the sooner you start identifying those critical values at risk, the sooner operations can start formulating a plan for protecting those values at risk and mitigating the safety that's associated with that. That's how the whole process works. All right. Yeah, that's basically the hour that I wanted to take up. Are there other questions or anything that you guys want to cover while we got the group?
Everybody's looking at you, Kyle. So I think our story map is just waiting on a few updates.
There's a lot of feeling
Yeah,
centric language.
well, it's like all these documents have been. Our story map.
Yeah.
I'm in the process, I mean, literally.
There's just gonna have to be some things for that this year. There's gonna be stuff like that's gonna bleed through. There's so many things to build into this.
He's gonna give you master.
And it's just another tool, you know, I mean, like I said, every district has their own processes and different things set up.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you guys were on our call last week, but when Craig was talking about stuff in binders, I was like, oh, no. I did not want to hear one of my FMOs say there's still stuff in binders. If the binder still works for you, but in reality, you only need one binder. right? If you in briefing a team, give them one binder, that's all they need. The IC looks at it, gives it to the plans chief, the plans chief has it for the rest of the time. Nobody else can.
Spike about that too, a long time ago. For every section of this, all right, we were there till fucking 1 o'clock. So the spatial care planning is the way to go.
Yeah. That was me in 2012, Donovan, so that's, that would be 12 years ago, and this is why we have the process.
No, that's
now.
great.
Yes, so, hey, I appreciate your time. I'm available. If I need to reach out. If you need any WFDSS help, need any fire modeling, yeah, reach out. Let me know. And hopefully this
Are you
helps not to rest on. No, well, I'm on Powell's team.
Type 3 stuff?
Yeah, I'm doing type 3 plans. But yeah, I'm available to do SOPA work or any kind of WFDSS work outside that schedule and even during that schedule.
You know, it's a show.
Yeah.
You've done that before. There's a lot of firefighters that got good at doing what homework this is on fitness and
Hey guys, yeah, if there's no other questions, that's all I got. So yeah, thank you. I'll stop the recording and